At 15, I started asking myself, what is my purpose in life? There was this Hindi film called Ek Ladki Ko Dekha To Aisa Laga that I had done. I play a lesbian in the film. Routine love story that I know him to where he is today. I think his resilience that has taken him this far. The moment the pandemic hit, chop, my hair went so short and I colored it red.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I wanted to experiment and I did it. Success that way for me, it's very subjective. Keeping my emotions in check or being aware of what I was doing is very successful for me.
Do You Mind? Brought to you by Sparkplug Digital, South India's #1 English podcast.
I'm sure you wouldn't mind joining me in this episode of Do You Mind with someone who's really special, not only because of her career, but because of a lot of other things, a lot of holistic things that she's a part of in her life. She's greatly influenced a lot of people that I personally know. And I am 100% sure that you will enjoy listening to her and about her life in multiple ways. We have Regina Cassandra today, who is a very dear friend and also who is into sports and fitness and so many different things. I always looked at her as not just an actress, but a lot of things and a wholesome personality, to say the least. So guys, do you mind joining me in this conversation? So Regina, is it Tamil Ponnu or Telugu Ammai?
Wow, we started off with some controversial stuff. Now I think I mind. But I also matter. So I'm not going to choose. Rende. I mean,
Rendu.
Tamil Ponnu, Telugu Ammai. Anni undach kada nenu. But yeah, because my heart lies in both the places. What I've gotten from Tamil people and what I've gotten from the Telugu people, it's just been heartwarming and wholesome. And yeah.
I think that's the same with me also, for some reason, both have so much of emotion attached to it. Hyderabad and Chennai, it's a very...
Right, like we were speaking earlier.
Yeah.
It's so refreshing. So you were telling me how when you're in Hyderabad, sometimes you miss Chennai actually, right? And you live by the beach. When you're in Chennai and especially when you have access to the beach, a nice view from home, I feel like when you're in a place like Hyderabad, you would tend to miss it. So it's very refreshing to hear that, because everyone otherwise just keeps complaining about the heat in Chennai. Maybe that's one positive about global warming. Everywhere is now hot. So doesn't matter whether you're in Chennai, Bombay, Bangalore, Hyderabad. It's pretty much all the same now.
Tell me, how were your foundation years different?
I've had a great foundation. I'm the only child. So I had a lot of learning to do. At a very young age itself, I started understanding what being the only kid meant on my psyche. In the sense, just small things like learning to share. If you have siblings, whether you like it or not, you have to learn how to share. If you're the older sibling, you have to learn how to let go of what you want and let the younger siblings have it. Or if you're the younger sibling, you have to be used to getting hand-me-downs, stuff like that. So things like that. And then how I could also be a people pleaser, although I'm trying to be a nice person. I could also want to be a people pleaser. So these certain things that you tend to walk into being the only child, I feel like I started understanding at a younger age. So being, a girl, a daughter and a single mother parent brought with it a lot of learning as well, whether I liked it or not. All of these things I feel like definitely made me, molded me into the kind of person that I am. And just with the way life took its turn and stuff like that, I was a very independent child. So being independent was a quality that I had without even knowing that I had. And then in terms of, even working in this industry, choosing this career, earning at a very young age, all of that added to the already predisposed independence that I was used to, and then it made me the so-called pro-independent woman, and so I think having such a hardcore growing up, I studied in Lady Andal in Chennai, all through my schooling. And I was also a school pupil leader. And then I did my psychology in Women Christian College, again in Chennai. But I was also a very adventurous kid, very adventurous, very curious, it didn't always get me into trouble. Definitely did get me into trouble, my curiosity. But it also helped me learn and understand a lot about myself and my environment.
Why did you start that early? Did
Acting?
anyone tell you? Yeah.
It just happened. In fact, sometimes I look back and I'm like, did I choose this or did this choose me? And I always find myself in many interviews saying, I really didn't choose this career. It was an opportunity that came my way and I jumped on it because it kept coming to me. I was in the 4th standard when my mom's friend, who was an ad filmmaker, Krish uncle, he saw me. And so my mom, since I was a girl child, my mom loved dressing me up and I would be dressed impeccably well. So if I was going for a friend's birthday, that was one of the few times you get to dress up, right? I'll have like these frill sock, shoes that are matching my dress, and I'll have ribbons in my hair, like 2 ponytails or 1 ponytail, 1 ribbon. She really loved dressing me up. So one such birthday I'd gone for and we'd finished and I was going back home and my mom was going to her friend's place. So we went together and uncle was there. He was like, oh my God, you're so cute. You should be doing ads. So that very night, and I still remember, that very night, he made sure we spoke to a coordinator, Biju Auntie. She's a very famous coordinator in Chennai. And so she was like, yeah, I got a portfolio done, got my pictures clicked. And they used to be damn funny. I used to love doing them. So that's how it started. It just started with ads. I think my first salary, if I remember right, was around 800 or 850 rupees as a kid. And this I'm talking about in 1995-6 types.
So how were you able to manage academics then?
I wanted to be an all-rounder, I guess. And because I was the only child again, all my mom's focus was on me. I was not a pampered kid. Everyone keeps asking. Every time I say only kid, everyone's like, yeah, pampered. I'm like, no. My mom always believed in spare the rod and spoil the child. So I was definitely not spoiled. But I think that has shaped me into who I am today. And I did become school pupil leader. I was an average student. I had 85%, but I played sport. I played basketball for school and I was anchoring for Splash Channel at the same time, doing ads. I was learning Bharatanatyam. So I was involved in school activities as like an all-rounder. I think I was able to balance it pretty well, but it was not easy. But also having said that, I was a really cute kid. My mom, I think somewhere or the other, thought that it is important for her to make sure I always have my feet planted on the ground. As a girl child, I was caught between that and also understanding my impact on the opposite sex. So I was always caught between my mom telling me that beauty is only skin deep. And, if you're not a nice person, no one's really going to care about how good you look. And also about, trying to create my space with the opposite sex. So I don't know, it was very difficult because you don't know what you're doing and you can only through awareness understand these things or having a conversation with other people have this thing, right? So there was a lot of that growing up as well. And my mom always tried to make it a point to make me be grounded.
That's so important, as a woman to know that you can dress well but still have your mind in blaze and pack in blaze. Is that why you even moved on to do psychology? Why did you graduate in psychology?
So when I was young and in school and everyone kept asking, the normal question that all adults want to know is, what do you want to do when you grow up? It at least helped me think as to what I want to do. And more than, in fact, what I wanted to study, it was again the intention. My intention was to be in service. As a young kid itself, I felt like when I was in school, I would always be like, yeah, when I go to college, I'm going to go and I'm going to work as a waitress in the US. I want a full thing and I will earn my own money. I'll at least be doing service while I'm learning. It used to be this whole thing in my head. Never happened. But it made me understand that I always wanted to be in service and something I had. So I was like, yes, I want to do medicine. And as I started talking about it to my mom and to telling people I want to do medicine, my mom was like, listen, medicine, it takes a lot out of you. So I was like, oh, that doesn't feel nice enough. I want to be in service, but I don't want to put myself through to a grind just to be in service. So then I thought about it. And then when I was 14, I was in the 9th standard. That's when psychology started as a subject itself started coming about. This is 2003, 2004 types. It was still a very nascent subject. You could count the number of psychologists in Chennai at that time itself. And then I said, this is really interesting because I like understanding why people do things. It seemed interesting till statistics came as a part of my subject. I was like, oh no. So that's why I studied psychology. I wish I pursued it. I wanted to do my master's as well. I wanted to do criminal psychology. But then I came to Hyderabad and started shooting for SMS right after college. So that sort of halted. But yeah, that was the main reason I studied it.
That's nice. And it's nice to know that you were also into basketball, and which tells us why you still like doing your marathons, and I catch you doing paddling and whatnot everywhere all over in Chennai running races.
So, did I slow down a bit now for some reason? I don't know why, but I do any opportunity that I get to play a sport, move around. I love the outdoors. I love nature. It's very important that even from home, I see trees, I see birds, and I play some sort of a sport. I think it's so important to move. And sport, more than just as an exercise or movement or whatever, it keeps your mind active as well. Some people who I know who absolutely love playing sport say it's meditative as well.
There is some kind of spirituality in you when you talk about mind and when you're talking about sport. Everything, service, all of that finally meets at a point, and that's mostly the spiritual side of you coming out. So when did that experience happen?
I was 15 when I picked up my first Paulo Coelho book, and it happened to be The Alchemist. Ever since then, I've read that book at least 4 times in my lifetime. And when I read the book and, he speaks about signs in the book, I was like, okay, this is interesting. I connected so much to the book. At 15, I started asking myself, what is my purpose in life? Why am I here? I have to be here on this earth for something. What is it? And it's so beautiful, that journey, right? Because once you start asking that question, why, you tend to feel so separated from a materialistic world. You're living in this materialistic world. You can't detach yourself from this world saying, I renounce everything and I go. And then face no consequences. Every action has a consequence. And it's not like I want to detach myself from this world. I want to live in this world, but I want to detach myself from, everything else that seems so unnecessary. I didn't know what was unnecessary. I didn't know what I wanted to detach myself from. I only wanted to understand what is this purpose. And then you go on to understanding the soul. And then I went on. So when I was 15. And then when I was in college, I think my second year of college. So yeah, when I was 19, I had finally come across this book, Many Lives, Many Masters by Dr. Brian Weiss. And it opened an entire box, like a Pandora box for me, of past lives. This was the most interesting because it came from a person who was a psychiatrist. And in his field of study, this entire concept is nullified. There's none of my psychology friends also, when we talk about past lives with them. And it's a very interesting conversation, right? Because they don't look at it like that. They don't judge me for saying it, but they have their own understanding. They're like, so when I talk about, and I've done my past life regression as well. And all of this is in this journey, right? So when I talk to them about it, they have this thing is like how you dream. When you dream, you see things and, that could also be a dream. Very limited explanation to it, but this is their take on it. So I was really drawn to the book. And again, that book also I have read maybe twice. After I read that book, and Dr. Brian Weiss has many other books. It's called One Love, Many Souls, Many Bodies. I think that's his recent book where he talks about past life regression, and then he talks about progression. So he says if you can go back, you can also go to the future. And these kind of things really get me thinking, understanding. And in that book, he's written about purpose. It's so beautiful because we think purpose, what could it be? It's this larger than life thing. It's this and that and all of that. And he writes these concepts of purpose. He says the purpose of the soul is to learn patience, love, understanding, compassion, empathy. And then I'm just like, wow. Because then you're thinking, okay, it's not, that's all. Then, asking yourself, what are these things that you need to work on? And through life, I have probably, again, because of this thinking about it and all, I feel like patience is something that I have maybe learned. And I don't mean by being a patient person. Sometimes life has its way of teaching you things, right? And I would, recommend that people read this book. I saw myself as a tribal man and one as an English woman. The images from those two lives that I happen to, see are still ingrained in my mind, the images, because it's so beautiful. You go into hypnosis, and then once you're sitting there, the therapist who's doing it with you will take you through it. There's a flow of the whole thing. And again, Dr. Brian Weiss in his book says it's not just a dream or just something, because if the person's emotion is connected, you'll feel it in this life also. And that tells you that it was a life lived, or rather it's an authentic experience. And it happened to me. I cried as I was narrating the story to my therapist, and my eyes are closed. I'm very aware of my surroundings and all of that, but I just didn't want to open my eyes. And I was there explaining everything that was going on that I could see visually. And they tell you, don't let your mind come into play. The mind's also a very interesting thing at the end of the day, because the mind is like a muscle that we overwork. We think that thinking is great, right? Like, oh, that person's a thinking person, but not necessary. We overwork our minds. We go to the gym, we work a muscle out. We work that one muscle out one day, bicep, tricep, or, back or whatever. The next day, you don't go and do the same thing. Or you're not constantly doing bicep curls because you want to build a bicep. But we lose our minds. Like every day. All these men, I tell you.
And I think we'll have too many common things too. I'm just determining how. Okay, what?
Possible. There are too few women and too many men. So
there are too few men in Chennai.
Oh, in Chennai, yeah. Too few good men.
Too few good men.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you.
Okay, if you had to give me a heartbreak advice, what would it be?
Heartbreak advice?
Yeah, just random.
Oh my God.
Did you go through one? Because you should have gone through one to give me one. Okay, fine. Perfect.
Oh, only if I've gone through, I'm able to advise. Ledante, shut up and sit. Okay. Fortunately for you, I've gone through. But I think healing on the whole for me has been a very interesting process. That is the most important thing for me, because yes, I have gone through heartbreak in terms of betrayal. The problem with something like betrayal is you tend to get into a victim zone very easily, and rightfully so, right? Okay, not rightfully so, but understandably so. I'm very averse to that, because ever since I was a child, not having my father around made everyone around me sort of feel sad for me. And then it took me to a totally opposite this thing. Oh, you should be feeling sad for me. I don't need your, empathy or sympathy or whatever it is you're trying to show me. And that took me the other way. And then I realized, because I don't want to be like this, I'm also not, I'm like this, and that's not right. If I have to give you advice, I think take your time and heal. I think there's no time slot saying that, you need to heal so fast. I think grieving is a good process, is a part of the process. It's important to grieve. It's important to understand that, you're feeling a certain way. Take your days off, take your time off. I think that's something you can avoid. Sitting with your feelings. Again, not asking yourself, why is this happening to me? Or why do I have to go through this? Yes, definitely ask yourself why this is happening to you, in a way of wanting to learn what your patterns are. Why is this constantly happening to you, in that sense, not in a victimizing sense of, God, why do you always do this to me, or that sort of a thing. It's not God's doing. Again, if you believe that all of us have God in us, then it's your own doing at the end of the day. So yeah, and it's not about being practical about it or anything like that. I think it's very important to be in touch with your emotions. So if you find yourself heartbroken, then it is something that it is a signal for you to understand that there's some work that needs to be done here. Either the kind of men that you're, men/women you're attracted to, what you're actually looking for in a relationship. I, at the age of 30, understood which is not so long ago, like 4 years of my understanding. Till I was 30, in fact, I never realized what I missed out on with the absence of a father in my life. It was only when I was 30. And why 30 is because some of my friends by 30 had children, my very close friends, whose husbands I was also am close to. And I see them turning into fathers. And when I see them, especially with girl children, and when it is physical play, I realized at 30, I was like, I would sit back and like, is that okay or not? And then I caught myself thinking it. And I was like, why am I thinking this? Like, that's so weird for me to think, is it okay for a father to be this close to his girl child? And then I realized because I didn't have that experience is why I'm thinking that. So it made me understand a lot, and then made me understand also what I wanted in a relationship and what I was looking for in a relationship and why I was looking for that in a relationship. And how to disassociate myself from the fact that I probably wanted a father figure in my life in the sense of a boyfriend and all, but I might not be able to handle that kind of a thing. So I've been single for the last 5 years now, mainly because I'm trying to understand what my patterns are. And it's not about repeating patterns or not, but just to understand what it is that I would want from a wholesome relationship, a family of sorts, what kind of a family, and what I can bring to the table as a wife or a mother or a girlfriend, whatever. So, yeah.
Wow.
Your advice went on.
You summed it up really well. Thanks for the advice.
You don't need advice, Deepti. I should be asking you for advice, okay?
No, I've been single too. It's been I didn't count years, but yeah, it's
been some time.
It's been good.
Yeah.
It's been some time.
And I'm sure you've been a single parent as well. And, that's not been easy. And I've sat on the other side, of the table, and I understand it, especially, in a world where you also want to do other things than just, be a mother. You want to care for your child. You also want to care for yourself, and the work that you're doing for yourself, how much I've seen you grow through the last, I think 8 years almost, when you started this whole industry, in this industry of sport and everything else. And I've seen you expand. It's really not easy, especially when you see women climbing up the ladder. The toughest thing for women today is one, when you see women climbing up the ladder, men seem to feel like they have the biggest hand in it. They are the reason as to why a woman in their, not house alone, be it at work or home or wherever, they've been the biggest part of, that woman going up wherever. And also, women bringing women down. Jealousy is such a feminine trait.
Oh God, I've seen that a lot.
Yeah.
Why is it so deeply?
You and I are women as well. I think we should be asking ourselves that question.
Okay. Did I ever feel jealous? No, I don't think so.
I'm sure you and I have. I've felt jealous. Again,
if maybe if some woman was with the man that you wanted.
See? No, but that's the thing. It's not wrong to feel jealous. It's okay. It's not a wrong thing. But again, that's what I was telling you before as well, right? To be aware of the fact that you have felt this way is what is important. So you don't put yourself down saying, oh, I shouldn't be feeling jealous. Oh, I'm too good to be feeling jealous.
Yeah.
It's okay to feel jealous, and the moment you understand that that intention is coming from maybe a lack of what you have in your life, which is most of the time, the jealousy towards the other person will evaporate, and you will start concentrating on what you need to concentrate on. And that's the beautiful thing about awareness, right? The moment you're aware of the fact that, oh, I'm feeling a certain way. Why am I feeling a certain? It comes back to you, and then the focus comes back to you, not on the other person anymore, right? So that is so important. And jealousy is a very feminine trait. And by feminine, I don't mean just with women. There are a lot of men who are in touch with their feminine, and I don't mean they're not straight again, and feminine and masculine is what? Masculine is logical, feminine is emotional, just to break it up. So a lot of people in touch with that emotional side as well who tend to feel these things. And I feel like that way it's not easy being a woman in a space where you're trying to create an image for yourself or an identity for yourself, because it's again masculine traits. if to create an image or an identity for yourself, you have to have that logical, side that is doing these things. So it's an interesting balance that we create in ourselves, right? To be in touch with the nurturing emotional side, at the same time, be able to fight. Because again, to fight for something is a very masculine
thing. I know.
So
we find ourselves every day fighting for something or other.
or the other, right? So I feel like, that's where that balance, if it comes in, it's important. And it's like I said, it's not easy being a woman in a field where you're trying to create a name for yourself.
So how do you create that balance for yourself? What are the things you do?
I've been told that meditation is something that I should, keenly take up by many people, whether they see that I'm a Sagittarian, they tell me meditation is important for you, or whether they see that, I have these certain questions and answers in life, like that curious mind, they say meditation is important. Also, growing up as a child, I've had this thing with concentration. My concentration goes like this, like everywhere. Like it's so difficult, but it takes time for me to focus on one particular task. But the moment I do it, then I'm all in it, right? I think meditation is something that helps me. I also learned to understand over the years that I'm someone who absorbs energies very easily. So I take time off to myself. If I'm having a day like this, where I meet at least 50 people in a day, and by 50 people, it will mean having interactions with these people. It's not just in a room of 50 people. I would have had interactions with 50 people. At the end of that day, I'm done. That day and the next day, I don't want to see a soul.
It is quite exhausting.
I just want to be by myself, energize myself. I think soaking myself in salts helps me. These are very few things that I do. I take time off. I don't think. It is so interesting. I've been trying this, where I sit in nature, maybe in my balcony or something, and I don't think.
Stare at.
It's not even staring.
Close your eyes.
Not even closing my eyes. That is like meditation.
That is
for
like
me.
transcendental meditation.
Yeah, okay. But I'm just looking. I might be looking at birds. I might be looking at the trees. But I'm consciously aware of the fact that my mind is not running. I'm just looking. I'm not observing. I'm not doing anything. I'm not even concentrating on my breath. I'm just looking. And it's so interesting because it takes 10 seconds and my thought.
It is very interesting. I tried that too. That not doing anything is the biggest answer to most of the problems we have today. I think.
and I'm trying to just because at that moment you're telling yourself not to think, right? And then you tell yourself I'm not going to think, and I'm just looking. But there's so much stimuli around that you can't help but think, oh, what a beautiful bird. Don't think.
Don't look at the bird.
No, look at the bird, but you don't have to think, oh, what a beautiful bird.
Yeah, don't say anything.
Yeah, just. And for me, that is something that I'm trying to this thing. Why am I trying to do it? I don't know. I feel like it's an interesting
that
exercise.
tribal man is coming back.
Probably.
Actually, of all the things, I can totally imagine, visualize you. Yeah.
What the hell? Should I take that? I don't know anymore.
No, because that wild side inside all of us that we have.
If I tell you a tribal man story, I'm not saying it on camera, so don't even ask me.
Is there another tribal man story?
There's only that one tribal man story.
Okay, fine, all right.
But I'm not telling you the story. No, not in that way. No.
That tribal instinct that we all have, which I think over a period of time, we've just tried to keep putting it under the cover. And today, like they say, for the society, we are being what the wild people that we want to be, we cannot put it out. That's what I'm saying. I mean, you just can't randomly be however you want to be. But I think we all have that.
You can actually be however you want to be. We can. But again, that decision comes at a cost. I know that for a fact because there have been certain decisions that I have made in my life with regard to my industry that that has not put me where I could have been. but I know it has put me where I should be.
I know I see that a lot in you. You know, that's what I'm saying. You're so paced out with the work you do. You just choose as maybe with your heart, as you feel, as and when you feel that you want to do something. You're not taken over by how people want to perceive you or the kind of goals that they want to fixate on you. There's so much of thought. How do you do that? Why do you do that? Like, why is it that you're not taken over by competition or anything?
Because I'm a rebel. I am a rebel. I've been a rebellious child. I've been a rebellious adolescent, adult, everything. And this is obviously, it's come from since I was a kid and the only child. And like I said, right, my mom would always tell me, you should do this. And I would just look up and be like, why? If I'm not okay with why I should do it, I will not. So even when I came to the industry and many people said, you should do this or you should do that. I'm not saying I will not do it. I'm not saying because you're telling me to do it, I will not do it. It's not that. But when you tell me you should do it, and if I feel like it doesn't resonate with me, I won't do it. It could be anything simple like, oh, this is how your career should go. I was not ever okay with anyone dictating how anything should happen in my life. But yeah, so I think that is the core person that I am. I will not do something unless I feel like this is going to help someone or, this is going to be beneficial for everyone around.
So is that the point from where Democratic Sangha pops up from? Why are you a co-founder for a social organization? And you also do a lot of social stuff in Chennai as well. So where does that person come from?
I think that has always been a part of me. It is not something that I built on my own or built with too much thought. Being in service has always been, I think it's an involuntary, like an involuntary muscle, like an involuntary muscle in your body. It has been exactly like that for me. It has never been too much thought to it. The moment a lot of NGOs have approached me to be a part of their NGOs, in this career, at least of mine, I first of all need to know where I want to give my time, not that I need to segregate it as well. And will I be impactful enough to be a part of that NGO? Will I be able to do something, for them? Yeah, Democratic Sangha came to me through Chaitanya, and he's a very dear friend who I was introduced to by Lakshmi. I think giving back, we say giving back to the society, and we just misuse that whole, giving back to the society. We think whatever we do is giving back to the society. But I feel like we need to be conscious about it. Yeah. And when Chaitanya had told me about Democratic Sangha and how, as citizens of this country, there's so many things you're unaware of. I think that for me was very interesting. That is one. And then what we wanted to do for rural women, that is two. We had just started off. We are a year old and we've got a long way to go.
So where does this strong persistence to do something for women inside you come from?
Having seen my mom being a single parent and, fighting the odds, having been a woman in this industry who has absolutely no backing, no background, no whatsoever you want to call, I really wished at one point in my career, somewhere in the middle around 2014, 15, I really wished I had a mentor to tell me that, this is the goings-ons of, what's happening in this industry. This is what you do and this is what you don't do. And it never came. So I feel like any given moment where I can help another woman, and it has nothing to do with just women, but I feel like women are in need of that more so than men. So, but this would go out to anybody. It's not just man or woman, right?
I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah.
Because I think equality in India, sometimes it's men, sometimes it's women who are suffering. It's not always the same.
Yeah, it isn't. Just the fact that I feel like if I'm in a position to help, someone, I want to definitely be there in whatever way I can, in whatever supportive way I can. And I feel like that is what has been this thing, And with Democratic Sangha, I know Chaitanya wants to do a lot. And I like that vision. I like what he brings to the table as well.
That's awesome. So what was that point where you felt in the industry, especially when you said 2014, 2015, Was that the time that you were saying you felt depressed? How did you overcome that as a psychologist?
Because I studied the subject and I understood what was going on. That happened in 2015, end of 2015 to 16. I had some hormonal changes going on. I was aware of the fact that I was breaking down into a certain pattern. I was not clinically diagnosed with depression, but I could tell that I had something that was totally off with me. Even like now, like talking about it, every time I talk about it, I have visuals. Every time I talk about something that I remember, it's always visuals. I felt like I was done with the industry. I felt like I was... so if I feel like I'm not contributing enough to something, whatever it is, I would rather step out of it. You're wasting space, I feel like, in that place. So hence, and I mean, that could also come from all the trauma that I've gone through as a child, but then whatever, right? So I felt like I was not needed in this industry and I'm done. Like, it's okay. Too bad. You tried. But I was also going through a lot of apathy and, I was unkempt for some time, sort of a situation. I would wake up in the morning, I would be crying. I would cry throughout the entire day. I would not understand what was going on with me in the middle of the day. I would hyperventilate. I had all sorts of different understandings of me, anxiety, whatever it was, it would come in parts and go and stuff. And I realized that I was slipping into something. But again, the process of healing is, like I said, I love the process of healing. And I was shooting for a film then. And I was shooting in Chennai. And the universe is also like really beautiful, like how things just happen, When you want, like, I just made the decision of, I'm not going to let myself slip into this 100%. But I'm not going to force myself out of it, saying, oh, I have to get better, I have to feel better. This can't happen to me. Was never a thought that came to me. And I was shooting for a film on ECR only. In fact, there's a Tamil film called Nenjam Marupidhillai. I was working with Selvaraghavan sir, the director, and he was, after a long time, after a long hiatus, he was also coming back, and there was a lot of like buzz around the film. And because we were shooting on ECR, my producers were very nice enough to tell me that, you know what, instead of traveling from the city, if anyone knows ECR, it's like 2 hours away from the city. Instead of you traveling on and out, we have like a villa here. You can probably stay there. I jumped at the offer because I was like, I need to be by myself. So again, when I'm healing, I have this thing. When I'm going through something, unless you're around me, you will not know that I'm going through it. Physically around me, you will not know that I'm going through something. It could be my friends, family, anybody. I don't talk about it till I'm fully healed. So the moment they said this, I said, yeah. It was a 3-bedroom villa. My assistant said he'll come and stay with me because I was shooting. I had my assistant with me, my spot boy. He said he'll come and stay with me in the villa. I said, yeah, okay, makes sense. I don't want to be alone, whatever. He came, stayed one day. I said, actually, you know what? You please go back to the city. I want to stay here alone. I don't want a soul around me. And I was shooting nights. So I was shooting, like I'd have to go to shoot by around 6 p.m. and we're done by like 3 a.m. Okay, I'll be back. So, yeah, I would go shoot, come back to this villa. My mom would probably send lunch from the city. I'd, have like lunch with me and all of that. I would sleep, wake up, work out, go for a swim, just relax, eat nicely, work out nicely, get ready for shoot, go to shoot, come back. I did this for like 2 weeks at that villa. And I felt like I was feeling better already.
Yeah, I know, right?
I just needed that time to myself where I was doing what I wanted to do and not having to explain how I was feeling that day to anybody. Whether I was feeling good, whether I was feeling bad, whether I was feeling shitty or whatever it is, I didn't have to talk to anyone about it and I didn't want to talk to anyone about it. No one at shoot knew anything of what I was going through, which was great because it was all just work.
Yeah.
And then come back and then just be by myself and just, like understand what was going on. I got out of it in 2016 itself. And I feel like having studied what I studied, at least it made me feel anxious of the fact that I was going through something. So I was aware that, okay, fine, I was slipping into something and that helped quite a bit.
That's the first thing, like awareness, which most of the people don't understand, some consciousness inside you to tell you that you are actually going through something will help you find a way to get out of it sooner than later.
The moment you're aware of the fact that, again, you don't let your mind come into play at all. The moment you're aware of the fact that, oh, I'm feeling a certain way, If your mind says, oh, but you have done so much in life, how can you feel like this? Then you're doomed. Again, after awareness comes acceptance, as we all know. Many people have told us this. After awareness, the next step is acceptance, and it's important. If you don't accept what you're seeing, then you're in trouble.
But I just love how you said you like the process of healing. I think I was thinking that it would be cruel to say that when my friends ask me, how are you trying to do everything in spite of what you're going through or what you've been through? Those are the phases that have never brought it out anywhere. And I think that's exactly where I am too, like I feel that need to be by myself for weeks, months at a time. And that takes me out of that materialistic world. Like it actually gives me that balance that I want. And I so resonate with that love for healing.
I was sharing this with my friend once. I was telling her, pain is actually quite beautiful because only like, and she thought that I like pain. No, maybe. but it's nice because it gets you to understand where the issue is,
I mean, you don't grow. There's no pain, you don't grow.
Yeah.
I tell the same to my son too. It's important to fail. It is okay to fail. It's just what you do after that.
Because we're so conditioned at the end of the day that we have to be perfect, we have to be like this, we have to do that, we have to do all of this. So much conditioning throughout family, society, whatever, right? And that we forget that we're just human at the end of the day.
How did the first movie break happen?
I actually, along with ads in school, I also did a documentary of sorts. Once you get into this industry, like once you're on screen and people spot you, that's it. Then the journey continues however you want to take it. Kandanar Mudal was my first film. I went for this audition and there was another girl who was also called to play the sister. I was playing the heroine's sister. I'm great when there is see that all of us are vying for the same thing sort of a thing. I like to make a choice of, do I want to also be vying for it or do I want to step back from this? This is not my place. So it was very interesting and I liked it, and both of us were there for this audition. She got to play the heroine. They gave us a script. She got to play the heroine in the scene, and I the sister. And then when she had to play the sister, I played the heroine and she played the younger sister. And the audition got done, and the director, who happens to be a lady, when she walked out of the room, both of us were stunned to see each other, because this documentary that I shot for in school, I was in the 7th standard, and this one was auditioning for, I was in the 9th standard. And then she saw me and she's like, oh my God, I finally meet you. Her name was Priya ma'am. Finally got to meet you after so long. Where did you disappear to? I wanted to cast you in so many films before this. Without her doing or my doing, again, the universe is just so beautiful. Without any forcing happening, we got to come back and meet each other again for her debut film. I think without batting an eyelid, I was like, wow, this would be so good. But I was still audition phases. I hadn't even reached home when I got a call from the production saying, you know what, we'd like you to, this thing you've been selected, we'd like you to be a part of the film. But shoot starts in 2 days, which meant I had to go to school and tell them that I will not be coming for 2 weeks. And it was interesting, but that's how the first break happened.
The way, women are treated, or the way the casting couches. I don't know.
The thing is, nothing that I say is going to be this industry related alone. It happens in every industry. Just that there's so much light on this industry that whatever I say gets taken. And because I've been susceptible to this many times, not just because I'm a woman, it can happen to anyone in this industry. Journalists generally, for TRPs and, clickbait, take what I have said in an interview, because there's no rumor about me. There's literally nothing that you can create about me that I have not put out there and said. There's no rumor, link up. So, me doing something wrong that can come out there. But like journalists I've seen, especially meme content creators, would take something that I've said in an interview and blow it out of proportion and change the context to it. And this happens to a lot of people. I'm not the only one who's happened to. It happens every day to
That's so
actors.
sad, right? I always feel that as an actor, you first have to be already aware of the surroundings, where you're going, with what you're doing, because no matter what will unnecessarily, be spoken about, even if there's no subject, right? And then actually being yourself, at least in an interview, to open up and speak, and then people pulling out, a few seconds out of it and making dirty memes, if I can say so, or,
It
some
could be anything.
shit.
It
Yeah,
could be fun.
just
They make it
out of,
controversial.
yeah.
Sometimes it's funny. I tend to always brush these things aside. But recently something had come up where I had said something about how me being a South Indian in the North Indian environment, I've spoken about my experiences, which were taken and blown up into some sort of a meme. And then one of my producers from the South industry said, oh, that could be very detrimental to the South market. And that's when I realized, oh, wow, people actually take these things seriously. You reading something, on either a meme or whether it's on Reddit or wherever you're doing it, you're reading and you're forming your own opinion of it at the end of the day. You don't know how far it's true, not true. Did this person actually say it? Didn't say it?
And you don't know the context also. So
Yeah.
many
No,
times
leave the context aside. 100% you don't know context because you're seeing a meme. There's definitely no context. But some people actually take that and become serious about it. And that's when I realized, that's not right. But now what am I going to do to this thing? I feel like if I put that meme out and say, I didn't say this, it's going to create more of a thing. Then now every interview that I do henceforth in the future, they're going to ask me about why I put it out and said, why I didn't say this. Then it just becomes a whole thread that you don't want to deal with. So I tend to not react to these things. But that becomes a whole other thread. So I'm just like, I will do nothing and I will let everyone around me do whatever they want to do about it. It's fine. I will not budge.
Okay, good. So, what is your best film you've done till date?
I think Yevru is one such film. Awe is another film. Nenjam Marupidile is another film. Vidamuyarchi is another film. And for me, how I pick these films is because the journey of doing a film is so beautiful. It teaches you a lot about yourself. One, not everyone has the understanding of how much the process of shooting a film affect the people who are doing. Only a few people pay attention to the journey being beautiful. And these films that I mentioned to you, the reason I picked them is because the journey of doing that film and working with those people really, really, really shaped my life beautiful. These films are my backbone sort of a thing where I go back to and I say, no, there are such kind of people who understand what a beautiful journey of shooting a film or whatever show or whatever it is we're shooting is important.
Wow, that was deep. The journey of making a film influences the people who are doing the film.
It definitely does, and you don't realize it till you go and work on a film or in a project that people are not aware of how much the process of a journey is important.
It changes you, right? If you actually had a good journey or a process.
Yeah, definitely. It makes you see, like it's very basic psychology. When anything good happens to you, you become a good person. You want to do good. When you're hurt or when you're angry, when you're been put in a negative space, you don't care about the people around you. It's only normal psychology, right? Hurt people, they say. And I think that to understand is so important. But if it were not for the journeys that didn't live up to what I have already experienced, if it weren't for those journeys, I feel like I would not maybe be as grateful for the beautiful journeys that I have. So it's a conundrum of sorts.
Yeah. So without giving any names, what is the highest point you've seen? Just anything. If there's any positive or negative moment that you can think of which comes on top of your head.
Let's do the positive and negative in one situation itself. There was this Hindi film called Ek Ladki Ko Dekha To Aisa Laga that I had done with Sonam Kapoor and Rajkumar Rao, and Shelly Dhar was the director. Again, another lady director. I play a lesbian in the film, and that was my first Hindi film. When I was approached to do the film, I spoke to a lot of people in like my managers and then people from Bombay to understand what it is that I need to do and stuff. Should I be taking up the film? Because I was very kicked about the story and the character that I was going to play. Everyone said, this shouldn't be your first Bollywood film. You should be debuting, you should be doing the heroine, you should be doing that. So that put me in a space of, oh shit, I don't know what to do. Like, should I take that path? But I'm always someone who wants to only work in the present. I can't think about how this is going to impact. Not that I don't want to think about how is this going to impact my future decisions, projects. Will I get this? No, this felt like a film I should do. My internal dialogue was pointing towards, the compass was pointing towards one way, but everyone on the outside was asking me to point it in another direction. That's when I took the decision to listen to myself, and I did the film. I mean, how it impacted my career, I don't know, I don't care. And this film released in 2017 or 18, I think. And then in 21, I was in Meghalaya in a place called Tura. My friend is a headmistress in a school there, in Sherwood School. And I went to see her. Okay. And I was there outside standing, waiting for them to finish. I was outside the staff room. And these two girls came up to me and said, hey, we watched your film. And that helped us come out to our parents.
Oh.
And I was like, what? But that wasn't the first time I heard it. There was this other girl who, through some of the PR people in Hyderabad, tried to reach out to me and come and see me at one of the events that I had done over here in Hyderabad. And she was a fan. She is a fan. And she brought me like this. She has sketched something for me. She sketched one of my pictures out and she brought it to me. And she wrote an entire letter to me telling me how this film helped her come out to her parents. That's when I realized, oh wow, okay. The reasons I was thinking of doing this project were for myself, for my benefit. How is this going to impact my career? But maybe my internal dialogue was pointing me into another direction, probably for these reasons. Which back then, I never even once thought about me playing a lesbian in a film is going to impact someone's life like this.
Yeah.
And just to see these girls express themselves to me and to think that I've touched someone's life without even knowing that I have was me being in service again, right? And that for me is the most important thing.
Definitely.
However the film did or, whatever happened to it, after that didn't really matter. Like I felt like, okay, my job here is done, sort of a thing. This is why. And that came to me many years after doing the film.
Awesome. What is snakes in the industry?
Again, I think that's not a very industry-related question. At least pertaining to this industry, which is very different from what I want in life, is the fact that people feel the need to control situations.
Why situations? People feel the need to control other people also.
Yeah. The way you control a situation is by controlling other people, which is very toxic. Toxic for the person doing it, more so toxic for the people around as well. And that is something that I try to stay away from. I think it's very important to be aware of the fact that there are such people in this world, whether industry or not, in this world. And I used to be naive then till I found the balance between being naive and also being smart about the people around you.
How does that impact your personal life?
It's nice that most of my friends, family as well. So I'm the kind of person that there's so many people in my life that when I'm with the people in my life at that moment physically, I can't be in touch with people I'm not, who are not present at that moment in my life. I have a few friends that I probably talk to on and off now and then, but that also doesn't happen on an everyday basis. Like again,
I completely get that. I'm like that, and some of them abuse me. Some of our common friends who
The same people abuse me as well.
We have to go and talk to them.
Yeah. But having said that, because I'm consistently like this, I'm not different with different people. I'm like this. And I love it when my friends from different walks of life meet each other and have this one common thing about me. Oh my God, Regina doesn't reply.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Regina takes 7 business days to reply.
in the same way with me. They're like, the job is done. You don't have to reply now.
You know,
But
so
I'm also so present. I cannot be on,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's been months I've been on
and
Instagram.
I'm so happy that the ones who understand are sticking around. The ones who don't understand, who feel like they need more, understand that I cannot give it. It's not that I don't want to. I just cannot. People can choose if they want to be in my life or not want to be in my life. I'm not the kind of person to ask people to leave. But I'm the kind of person to tell someone that, okay, I don't think this is working for me. Yeah, that's about it.
So I thought I'll do a short rapid fire because you've done 50 projects in the last, 20 years. So it's been a pretty long paced out journey. It's not all about movies as well. So just making it clear, giving you a heads up. Who's the fittest actor that you've worked with?
Sudhir Babu.
Who's the most inspiring co-star?
Definitely Ajit sir, because that man never stops. You know, you reached a superstar status and you still are so humble and so, forget never stops. He never sleeps sort of a person. Like he's got like 24 hours in a day and he uses all 24 hours sort of a thing. But also all the young actors who I've happened to work with, who are debuting and who have gone on to like actually do so well in the industry with background, no background, whatever it is, it's not easy. People say, yeah, with background, it's easy and all of that. But not in today's day and age. You can be role like this, your career can go take any route. I think all the young actors who I work.
Awesome. And the most resilient co-star?
Sandeep Kishan.
Okay.
Absolutely resilient. And I say that with all heart because I have seen him grow from, routine love story that I knew him and to where he is today. I think that's his resilience that has taken him this far.
Awesome. So what's your current sense of style? Nothing to do with movies.
I have a very versatile face. If I'm wearing Indian, I look like a proper Indian Ammai. Like,
have.
one girl next door
Ponnu.
or woman next
Ponnu sollu.
Okay.
நம்ம
Proper.
தமிழ்ல பேசு கொஞ்சம்.
Tamil ponnu. If I wasn't an actress, I would have experimented a lot more with my hair, which I try to do now and then. The moment the pandemic hit, I was shooting for a film in Kutralan and I had to come back. And when I knew 6 months I will not be working, chop, my hair went so short and I colored it red.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I wanted to experiment and I did it. Yeah, and then for all, I went in did an undercut. I shaved this entire side and I shaved the back of my head. When I put my head up, I looked like a different person. I didn't look Indian.
Yeah.
The moment I put my
I'm
head down,
sure.
you have no idea what's going on behind my head tapes, So I love that because I did it for awe. So I try to incorporate it as much as I can in my films when I'm shooting my characters. Rather.
What is the one thing that Regina holds on to in crisis situations?
It will actually be contrary to holding on. It will actually be letting
Interesting.
whatever the current situation is. I forgive and forget very easily. I forget a lot more, like very easy. Like someone would have done something and sometimes I don't even remember that person's done that because that's it. The moment I've dealt with the situation, it's out of my mind, out of my psyche, totally. I'm short-tempered because I believe in like that moment, and then it's out. It's out of my system, it's out of the thing. But then I realize the moment it's out of my system, it's onto the other person. And I can't imagine that person now thinking, oh, I should also let go of it and, this thing. So I've learned a lot through that. So I've definitely reduced being short-tempered. And another thing that I've realized is somewhere through my own shortcomings, perfection seems like a thing that I feel like I should achieve all the time. And because I feel like I want to achieve that, and if I don't see anyone else in my team or around me not living up to it, it would trigger me. And when I realized that is what is triggering me again, the awareness, I'm like, okay, then I started to work on it and I started to understand, how to deal with these things. So I don't hold on to things.
Good. I went through therapy for that perfection problem
Yeah.
that I'm expecting from others around me at work
Yeah.
or anywhere.
It's so detrimental to your own health.
Yeah.
Thinking that,
Everything has
First of
to be
all-
perfect.
first of all, thinking that you do everything perfectly itself is wrong.
Yeah.
And the fact that you want to live up to your own expectations of perfect itself
Yes.
is putting you through an entire process. So yeah, I mean, it's okay to not be perfect, and it's okay if someone's messing up or doing something. I think I've come to understand that.
So, tell me, as on date, what does money mean to you? What does success mean to you?
Success for me, I've always been a very content person. I've been very content with life. Life has definitely thrown many a curveball to me, and there have been times where growing up, like I wouldn't have really a bank account. Although I was working and stuff like that, I wouldn't. Sometimes it would be like I paid for my own college tuition because of whatever I'd worked and collected and everything like that. So I was very independent that way. Money meant survival. That's what it always meant in this thing. But I could never hold on. If anyone wanted help, I was first one to help them. And then I realized that you also got to growing up slowly, you also got to take care of yourself before you want to take care of other people. Success, that way for me, it's very subjective, right? Knowing that I can go through a day, keeping my emotions in check or being aware of what I was doing is very successful for me.
So, where do you think men or even women are failing in relationships today?
I think it's conditioning. We have all been conditioned to think of successful relationships as we've been told. And this is at the risk of sounding woke, and it's okay to accept it. We don't have enough awareness of it in our country, which is fine. And having said that, doesn't mean I'm because I come from a so-called, I don't think of it as a broken family, but that's the phrase people have used many times before when referring to the kind of upbringing. But it's okay to want to explore different family dynamics, setups, relationships. Again, to put yourself on the line saying, my relationship has to be like this. All of these things, all these conditioning, these things that society has put on to us, that we tend to not ask ourselves what it is that we want. And to think that one long-term relationship is for you, and if you can't do that, then you're a bad person or you can't do this, I think that's where the problem lies. Not the only problem. Many problems are there, but this is one of it, I feel. Also, I feel like therapy is so important for everyone because we need some sort of help in being aware of what kind of person we are, what kind of attachment styles we have. There's so much knowledge at our fingertips today, but it'll be nice for people to understand their attachment styles. It'll be nice for people to understand themselves and what kind of a relationship they want, why they want those relationships.
Is this really what I want?
Is this really what I need? Or is it just because, I saw that relationship on some reel on Instagram and I want to be like them,
It's exactly like those books, those fairy tale books that we've been handed.
Or I want to be, my parents have had such a beautiful life together. I want the same thing. The sacrifices your parents made to have that life together, are you willing to make the same sacrifices?
Exactly.
No. Half the time it will be no.
Yeah.
Because in today's day and age, it's not like that. The generation was different. The lifetime was different. Your generation is different. The things you're seeing are different. The awareness around you is different. So, no. But you need to come to terms with the fact that, that you design your relationship.
So today, what is the reason why you're happy? What is that? What is it that you have that makes you happy?
The people around me.
You attracted those people in your life?
No, I attract wrong people also in my life. I'm grateful for those people also. But something that I've been practicing for about 1.5 years now is gratitude, which I've always wanted to practice. I don't journal. And for the longest time, I used to as a child, maybe for 1 year or 2. But then I realized my mom read my diary, I stopped journaling.
Good reason to stop journaling.
I just stopped because I was so shocked that someone can actually read my personal thoughts. And I was like, my thoughts can't be on paper anymore, I'm okay coming to terms with my thoughts, but I don't want anyone else to come to terms with these thoughts.
I can't imagine anyone finding my journal too. It's crazy.
Right?
Yeah.
And the moment I felt like she violated my personal space, I was like, the reason she violated my personal space was I gave her the chance to violate it, so I'm not going to journal. But that's a very stupid reason to not want to journal. But it still affected me. I've been wanting to journal for the longest time. I think I will get down to doing it soon. So I wanted to practice gratitude, and I felt like this whole, in the night before you sleep, think of whatever you were grateful for the day, didn't sit well with me, or is not something that I thought I should be doing. And then I started to figure out, how do I bring gratitude as a practice in my life? I am very grateful, okay, but just saying it is not enough. So I had to bring it to a point where I could think it, and so every day before I eat, when food is in front of me, I say the grace. Because growing up in a Christian household, if I didn't say the grace, I'll get a knock on my head. So I have to, make the sign of the cross and then say my grace. And then I realized this is something I do this is the only thing that I do as a practice every day.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, fine. Whenever I see food in front of me, the first thing is grace, right? So I thought I'd bring gratitude into that. So I close my eyes and whatever comes to my mind that I'm grateful for, whether it's people in the present, or whether it's situations that have happened, or, things that have happened, or anything, whatever came to my mind, it will be like at least 1 minute. I'd close my eyes, say,
Gratitude.
a prayer for the food in front of me, of course, and everything else that came to my mind. And that became my gratitude prayer. So
Wow,
at least,
I do that too. I don't even know that you do that.
really, when you eat, before
I
eat?
eat every meal.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's the best way to incorporate gratitude.
Yeah. I mean, not just gratitude. For me, at least, this is
A
gratitude.
prayer or
Yeah.
whatever that is, right? Yeah.
And I wanted to do it every day, So this felt like good, and I've been doing it. And after actually doing it, it is very interesting, because initially when I started doing it, it felt very alien to me. I then questioned myself and I was like, are you doing this because gratitude is the thing, manifestation, gratitude, people are talking about it? Are you one of those, or you want to just are you actually wanting to be grateful? And that, I realized, is also part of the process, because my mind then started coming to play saying, oh, you're doing this because of. And then I had to quiet my mind, tell my mind, you please stay away from this. I am doing this. It could be because of anything or nothing, and that was interesting. So to even understand that my mind was playing games with me, trying to tell me that you're doing this only for these kind of reasons or for those kind of reasons. And then to come over that and understand that I'm not, also helped me. And I think practicing gratitude has really made me more content, with what I have and how things happen and how things pan out.
That's awesome. It was lovely talking to you, Regina. I think
Likewise,
most of you, the person that you are, is something that I've always known, thankfully. And seeing you also grow mentally, physically, emotionally, in every way. You're a very strong woman. And it's so nice to, have it here on the show and let you out to other people as well. I enjoyed having you here today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
I think we
Really
should do
means a
part
lot.
2 as well, because it's not enough that we've spoken about.
I know we've not spoken enough about men.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
I know. You know what? Honestly, I think we've spoken enough about them. We don't need to give them
we
any
don't
more,
need to give them any more
screen time.
importance.
No, it's not importance. And
No
all
screen
that.
time.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll get only this much. Be happy.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank
Deepti.
you. Thanks.
Oh.
Thanks.
Do You Mind? Brought to you by Sparkplug Digital, South India's #1 English podcast.